Hi there, I'm Eli Sipka, and this is the Apatros Review. Now in this episode we continue our quest through the Sci-Fi Invasion box set from Mill Creek, and in this episode we take a look at a film that was released theatrically on the 24th of July 1959 in West Germany. It's a film from West Germany. And then Austria Austria in August 1959, and then in the USA on the 11th of October 1961. The film was written and directed by Victor Trivas, produced by Wolf C. Hartwig, and stars Horst Frank, Karen Kernke, Helmut Schmid, Paul Dahlke, Michelle Simon, and a bunch of other actors. The film, when you translate the title of this film from the German into the English, will be, technically in the translation it says The Naked and Satan, but Germans apparently translated this as Satan's Naked Slave, which will be the title I use for this video. But in English, it's known as The Head. Now, like I said, this is on the Sci-Fi Invasion box set. It's actually on the first disc. Now, this 1959 West German horror flick was one of the more eyebrow-raising entries in our country's genre output at the time. And this came out just before the whole West German film industry started pumping out Edgar Wallace adaptations during the 1960s. At its core, essentially the first film to do the whole decapitated head kept alive on a desk story that would be perfected by the American 1962 schlock classic The Brain That Wouldn't Die, only done in the typical German-style approach. This concerns Dr. Abel, an esteemed German professor who creates a revolutionary serum that he names Serum Z, or Serum Z, that can keep removed organs alive for as long as needed before they are finally transplanted. But a rival scientist for nefarious reasons, who goes by the name Dr. Ood, how odd of a name choice, approaches him for help and ends up decapitating the good doctor and keeping his head alive so he can help him perform a successful head transplant. It just so happens that the now bodiless doctor had a patient, a nurse with an extreme back deformity, who needed her problem dealt with, and Dr. Ood decides to use the opportunity for some twisted medical science fuckery, like the crap we just had over the past 2 years with regard for a certain global medical experiment. He tricks a striptease showgirl into coming to the mansion for some plastic surgery, only to kill her, chop off her head, and then transplant the nurse's head onto her body, a process that takes place over 3 months but is ultimately a success. The nurse, unaware her body came from a murder victim, in fact she believes she had an extreme cosmetic procedure, and didn't realize that her new look was actually not only a fresh body, but somebody else's body. And so she soon comes onto the horrible truth. Although, given that the body's previous owner was a nasty, selfish woman who at one point was so disinterested in the life she claims she wanted to die, it wasn't that much of a bad deed, and decides to help Dr. Abel take his revenge on Dr. Ood and stop the Mad Doctor from causing some potential trouble. Although the reality is that Dr. Abel was actually dying of a heart attack, prompting Dr. Ood to decapitate him in the first place. So basically, he cut off his head to save his life. Plus a body swap to be factored in, which ultimately is ironic that the Doctor used evil deeds for the side of good. The only problem with his actions being his method of doing good deeds. You know the old saying, you know, to do the Lord's bidding, you have to do the devil's work sometimes? Something to that effect. Anyway. Eventually, the nurse escapes to the police raiding the mansion, which ends up with Dr. Ood cashing his life chips by walking out a window, and the mansion burns to the ground with Dr. Abel's head finally put out of his misery. You know, this ain't that bad of a film. The whole concept holds the viewer's interest, even if it is rather shocky at times, but the only issue here, and this is a little bit of a deal breaker, not quite, is that while the film moves at a decent pace, it is terminally talky and dull for most of the running time. Most young people today would not be able to sit through this. Despite the premise, there is almost no gore here, but that is distinctly a German thing, given that the West German government at the time, and even the successor, the German government, were and are to this day notorious for censoring films for gore, thus leading to the creation of the German underground in the late 1980s. And yes, I'm a violent shit fan. But the German government actually allowed pederasts posing as sexologists to run a program where they took vulnerable children and put them in foster homes as kiddie fiddlers for more than 30 years. This evil experiment ending in the 2000s, but the consequences of that darkness enduring to this day. In fact, there's a couple of YouTube channels actually have done videos about this. In fact, the Lotus Eaters have done an episode where they pretty much took a deep dive into the whole German pedo experiment, and some other people have also done videos on that. So look that up. So the German government actually allowed that stuff to happen, but cut out the gore in their films. Anyway, the print I reviewed here is missing some nudity. There are no naughty bits seen here. So I have to say this film is a disappointment overall. Although if you're a bad movie masochist like I am, it might have some entertainment value, just don't expect too much of it. Now, Satan's Naked Slave, or with Head for American audiences, gets a D+, 3 out of 10. Being a disappointing film that had a decent premise for a good schlock medical horror movie, but unfortunately loses its head over the bad plotting, lack of milking the premise for the mileage it needed to achieve its full potential in the genre. So it's interesting, but it's an interesting failure. Now for gore nudity. Like I already mentioned, there's no gore nudity here. The most bare skin we get is a bed back. But in regards to the lack of nudity here, that's due to this print being cut with the nudity edited out. Now for some interesting trivia. Michelle Simon, who plays Dr. Abel, had some time before put on some tainted makeup on a previous job, the resulting reaction leaving him with temporary partial face and body paralysis. He had taken this particular role because he needed the money, and in the belief that the film would not be seen outside West Germany. He was wrong because this film became a small hit on both sides of the Atlantic. So, the film gets a D+, 3 out of 10. It's disappointing. But if you're a bad movie masochist, it's interesting. And plus the story does have some interest, but it doesn't quite work. But it's not terrible, so you can still get some enjoyment out of it. It's found on the Sci-Fi Invasion set from Mill Creek. It's actually on the first disc. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that. Now, I don't do requests, but if you have any questions about DVDs or films in general, just hit me up in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer. Hope you guys are staying safe. Take it easy, and that's it for this review. See ya.